Hello, hello. And as you join in, I'd love to see you all, put your location next to your name, the way Rainn and I have done. Would love to see you turn your cameras on if possible. The speaker will be with us for 1 hour, so, excited to engage with you all for that time. And I think we're just going to give it maybe a few more seconds until maybe a few more people chime in. But I'm looking forward to this session. Let's see where people are joining from. Oh, the UAE, awesome. India, Paris, Ecuador. Oh, Ecuador 2013 alum. Hello, I'm an Ecuador alum myself. Hi, Sydney. Syria, awesome. Another person from France, Arkansas, Florida. We're all over today. Peru, really exciting. Nice to have you all join us. I think we can go ahead and dive in. I usually like to start off with just some housekeeping items to make sure that we're all feeling, comfortable and in the know. And so, as I mentioned, location next to your name is awesome. We love seeing where everybody's joining from. Camera on is great, just to, feel like we're part of a community, even though this is virtual. And we'll be having the speaker here for 1 hour. I have some questions prepared as a moderator, but that doesn't mean that you cannot ask some questions yourself. So feel free to use the Slido link that was just popped into the chat. And so, you can use that link to submit questions. And this time around, we have a fun giveaway. So if you submit a question, just make sure to include your name when you submit it. You could get a signed copy of one of Rainn's books. So that will be raffled away to one lucky person who submits a question. And from there, if your question is selected, then we'll be sure to, spotlight you. So keep your camera on so we can see your face alongside mine and Rainn's. And, try to stick to the questions that you've been approved to ask, so there's more time for other people to ask their questions. And there may not be enough time to get to everybody's questions, but that, doesn't mean that your curiosity doesn't matter. We really appreciate you submitting your questions and apologize if we can't get to all of them. At the end, there will be a survey, so you can use that time to just, spread your gratitude to the speaker, and also, give us any feedback about the session. And finally, before we dive in, I'd love to just practice our, audience memberness by practicing the emojis. So if people, in an actual or in an in-person environment, we'd be clapping and screaming and, engaging in that way. But in this case, we have emojis. And so I'm gonna need you all to practice those emoji fingers. If you're a current or incoming global citizen year student, please give us the clapping emoji. Let's see if we see any in there. Oh, awesome. Maxwell, Lena, Caitlin. How exciting. Nice to see you all. If you're an alum like myself, then please give us the ta-da emoji. And so I'm going to give myself a little celebration over here. Oh, Dania. So exciting to Sydney. Hi, y'all. Hi, Tagati. And if you're part of the larger global citizen year community, or you're just a guest, or you're excited to maybe join us one day, then give me that heart emoji. Love that. Hi, Fernando. Hi, Danny. Awesome. Well, let's get into it then. So I'm just gonna start by introducing Rainn, or shall I say rainfall, heat wave, extreme winter Wilson. And so for those of you who, you probably already know, but I'm just going to go ahead and give a quick introduction. So Rainfall, Heatwave, Extreme Winter Wilson is an actor, writer, producer, and philanthropist best known for playing the role of Dwight Schrute on NBC's Emmy-winning The Office. He co-founded SoulPancake, a digital media company designed to explore life's big questions, celebrate humanity, and champion creativity. He is active in charitable and environmental causes, notably the Lide Foundation, an educational initiative in rural Haiti that empowers at-risk women and girls through the arts. During his off time, Rainfall enjoys playing tennis, chess, and spending time with his family. And for those of you who are confused potentially about why I'm calling Rainn Rainfall, maybe Rainn, we could start there. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. just expand that bio for us beyond maybe what we may know about you through the professional bio that I just used to introduce you.
Well, thank you, Sahar, for that wonderful introduction, and we'll get to know me plenty over the next 50 minutes. But this rainfall, heat wave, severe weather warning, Wilson, was a fun little stunt that I did. And some of the work I do is around climate change. I'm on the board of a climate nonprofit called Arctic Base Camp. And the focus of Arctic Base Camp is to amplify the science around what's happening in the Arctic vis-a-vis climate change, because whatever is happening in the rest of the world, it's 3 times as more severe in the Arctic. So you have melting permafrost, you have melting tundras releasing tons of methane. You have melting polar ice caps and sea level rise. It's certainly changing the flora and fauna there. And so this was a fun little stunt we came up with to have an Arctic risk name generator, which is an app you can go to, plug in your name, and it'll give you like a name tag. And we threw it out there into the world, did a little press release that Rainn Wilson has changed his name. And it was on the front page of all the news organizations, and got a lot of press. And it's a silly little stunt. I mean, it doesn't change anything, it doesn't affect anything. But sometimes you've just, there's a lot of different ways to work on climate. And one is to just get people thinking about it, talking about it, interacting with it in a new, fun, and different way. And it adds to the conversation, in other words.
Definitely. And I think that's something that I appreciate about what you did and what you do, is that you incorporate creativity into your activism. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more maybe about, just like what creativity means to you and how you try to infuse it into your activism, or maybe your work, your life.
Great. Creativity. Okay, great. So I fell in love with acting as a teenager, and I had a big decision in front of me. It's kind of a scary road to go into acting because it's really, really, really hard to make a living. Of the tens of thousands of people that want to be actors, you really only have a few hundred, maybe 1,000, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 that like really can actually make a living and pay the bills doing it. So it's incredibly challenging. And I was trying to make that decision when I was about y'all's age. I was about 19 years old, and I was in my sophomore year of college, and I was doing really well doing plays, at my college. But I knew that I needed a much deeper training. But that would require, 3 years program of acting training program, going into debt, really committing to acting. You can't go halfway, right? You have to go all in. And I knew it would be like a 10-year journey at least to give it a shot. And this was at this time, it was in the late 80s, and there was a really bad movie version of A Chorus Line, the musical A Chorus Line, that came out. And I was pondering whether I should take this path or not. And I went and saw the movie, and it was a terrible movie. Don't ever see it. It's awful. But all of these actors were singing and dancing and telling stories about being an actor. And they were like, I really need this job, and I just started sobbing in this movie theater. And I went outside. I was in Boston at the time. I went outside, and the sun was setting, and it was snowing, and this red light was refracted through the snow and I had tears on my face, and I just knew I had this transformative moment that I knew that I needed to become an actor. So I went and I auditioned for all of these acting programs, and And I was really lucky. I got into a great program at NYU that was a 3-year intensive program. And you're asking about creativity because what an honor and privilege it is to go to college to learn creativity, because we spent um, we spent 14 hours a day, 9 a.m. till 11 at night, every 6 days a week, rehearsing speech, voice, movement. We did circus skills, we did clowning, improvisation, theater games, Shakespeare, text analysis, all of these different, and I had 3 years, and yeah, I was paying through the tooth to do it, but it was an incredible experience. And by the time I came out, and then I did a couple years touring some Shakespeare productions, like I really had a grounding in what it is to be an actor and how to be an actor. And I guess the important thing around creativity is that creativity is wonderful, but what I learned in acting school was that you have to contain it and you have to learn how to express it, that you need all these kind of not limitations, but boundaries on creativity: voice, speech, text, movement. How is it going to come out? It's just like if you were going to study piano in a conservatory program, you have to understand rhythm, movement, texture, melody, and you're honing your craft, and your craft is coming out through a discipline. So that was really an honor to be a part of that and to kind of learn that way to kind of have a channel for your creativity.
Right, right. Understanding kind of the rules behind it, as well as the discipline behind it, to be able to play with it and to be able to allow it to run wild.
It actually gives you, having rules and a system and a discipline actually gives you more freedom, not less. It's kind of like the way that we have laws in much of the world that, like, let's say traffic laws, if there were no traffic rules and no traffic lights, and I've driven in many countries that don't have traffic lights or any traffic laws, it takes you forever to get anywhere. You'd think like, oh, there's no rules, I can just go as fast as I want. But everyone is going, no one is stopping. But when you have traffic lights, it actually allows you to get there faster. Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking to someone who comes from a country with one traffic light, so I understand.
St. Martin has one traffic light?
One traffic light. The rest are roundabouts.
Wow.
So we make it work.
Okay, all right.
And, thank you for mentioning that this was at a time when you were, at the age of many of our audience members, because it's just coming to me now that I don't think I properly introduced myself or the organization. So I'm just going to take a quick second to
please,
get on the same
by
page.
all means.
You're just so excited and nervous, and then you forget like what you're supposed to be doing. So just briefly, I'd love to let you all know, my name is Sahar, as you can see here. I am actually an alum of Global Citizen Year. And so for those of you who may be unfamiliar with the work that we do or who we are, Global Citizen Year is an organization that is launching a generation of leaders with the perspectives, skills, and networks to solve humanity's most urgent challenges. So, many people in here may be participating in one of our programs. We offer our programs to 17 to 21-year-olds who are change makers, who want to make a difference in the world, who want to understand themselves better, understand the world better. And we do that through, of course, many students who are here from the Academy, but also through our upcoming Take Action Lab program, which is an immersive program that will take place in South Africa with a focus on human rights. And so I'm glad that we could get that out of the way, because I was like, it was really on my mind that you all probably have no idea what this organization may be about. Some of you may not know. So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page there. And, since we're already on the topic of being 17 to 21, I'm curious, going back to that age, you were into acting, but what else was on your mind? What did that transition into adulthood look like for you? Were there some big questions that you had for yourself? Were there specific things that mattered to you? What was that like?
Well, for me, acting was 100% of my focus during that time. And it really was for the next 10 years of my life. And it wasn't until I got older that I realized, how acting could open so many doors to my activism and philanthropy. But I will say this, that one of the reasons that I was drawn to found the media company SoulPancake and do this activism and be a part of, educational initiatives in Haiti and climate change work and mental health work was the main acting teacher at NYU at the time was a wonderful woman named Zelda Fitzchandler, and she was a pioneer of American theater. She's the grande dame of American theater. She created the first theater that existed on its own outside of New York City, that had its own repertory company in the 1950s in Washington, D.C., called the Arena Stage. And she was legendary, a brilliant speaker, and a really incredible human being. And one of the things that she talked about a lot was actors as storytellers,
Right.
and actors as shaman. Now, a shaman, those of you know, we've always heard the word shaman, and we're not, it's 100% clear on what role shaman played, but shaman-like figures exist in every human culture. So they are part storyteller, they're part entertainer, they're part stand-up comedian, they're part myth maker, keeping the myths and legends of a culture alive. They're part court jester and, mocking people and making fun of people, keeping them on their toes, kind of like Dave Chappelle does, or a stand-up comedian does, kind of like taking on the existing culture in certain ways, provoking dissent. And but they're an artist, and they're also a spiritual figure, and often a religious figure, where they would lead prayers and um, uh, connect with the spirit world and the world of the ancestors. And there's a mystical quality, and they were a mystic as well as an entertainer and storyteller. And Zelda would talk about actors being like shaman. Like, we need to be not just, because just being an actor is like what? Like, I get an audition and I have my script and I learn my lines and I go in and I read them and I hope they cast me, and then I play the character. Hey, listen, and that's it, right? But she was like, you need to think bigger as an actor. You need to think like a shaman. Like, you need to challenge the existing culture. You need to tell great stories. You need to kind of be in community and collaboration and in a communal way, to advancing the civilization and keeping the flame alive of the great stories and the great archetypes. So I think that part of my training really helped me later on, because I never thought of myself as just an actor. I always thought like, well, I'm an actor and I want to have an acting career, but I want to be a storyteller and a writer and a producer, and I want to make theater, and I want to cajole people and make them laugh. I want to challenge them, and I want to kind of rise to my very best in while undertaking that enterprise.
Wow. Yeah, that's powerful. Not just being, the work you do or the job that you have, but something connected to something much greater in life. And I love that you spoke about storytelling, because we actually have a question in here from Arman. Arman, do you want to come up here and ask your question about storytelling? Just make sure your camera's on. Got it. Can we get Arman up here? Awesome. Great, Arman, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sahar, for bringing this up. Like this aspect of storytelling, it has intrigued me a lot as a kid. Like just having difficulties in proving my stance has been like a totally different thing. And this notion of empathetic storytelling that, Rain, you have been doing, like, by working at the Arctic Club, and then at the same time, like, just founding SoulPancake and stuff. I just wanted to ask, like, what are a few things you noticed are essential, or like you felt contribute to a better or like contribute to a better rhetoric when it comes to like empathetic storytelling, like either as a producer or as a storyteller, or like anything in general?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you very much, Arman. Yeah, I think that it's funny you say empathetic storytelling. The first thing that comes to mind for me is Roger Ebert was a very famous film critic, and a screenwriter as well. And he called films empathy machines. He called literally films empathy machines. So when you watch a film about, an immigrant traveling thousands of miles and the suffering they undergo, like you undergo that suffering along with them, you're able to open your mind and your heart in a new way, and maybe you have a deeper understanding of what it's like for that particular immigrant, and then immigrants all around the world. I don't know if it's really true, because I don't know how much. It would be an interesting study, like have people over the last 100 years of film actually become more empathetic to the plight of people that are very different than themselves, or not. I would love to see a sociological, study with, quantifiable data around that. But it's an interesting way of looking at storytelling, is that because I do believe storytelling at its best allows us to experience the life of someone very, very different than ourselves. I remember the film Moonlight that won the Oscar several years back. Like, I remember for me, like it really, being a young gay black man in Florida, in that, in an impoverished community of Florida, it's the furthest thing from my lily white existence. But I remember just having it profoundly touching me and moving me about what that experience must be like, and it really touched my heart, and I've thought about it a lot over the years. So the other thing that your question brings up for me is, there's one of Oprah's favorite quotes is called, goes like this. It says, it's from the Reverend Howard Thurman, and it says, "Don't ask what the world needs. What the world needs is people who have come alive. So find what makes you come alive and go do that thing." So I think that's really important advice for someone is 17 to 21, because it's really, the world is so challenging right now, and we get a lot of like, oh shoot, we need climate change, we need to rescue animals, and we need to build sustainable cities, and we need to have water, and we need to transform our agriculture, and what about healthcare, and there's so many problems, and they just feel such a burden on all of our shoulders, especially the young generation, because our older generation screwed everything up. But if you go into like, okay, I guess I'll go into agriculture, but your heart's not really into it, and you're not going to you're not going to do that much good. But if what makes you come alive is ballet, and you're able to go start a ballet company, and then that ballet company, I don't know, does a piece on sustainable agriculture, I don't know, in a dance theater context, you might be able to affect a far greater transformation. And, I think about that with me, and I'm really not trying to brag at all. But I think that if I had at age 20 convinced myself that I really shouldn't do acting, that I should go do water desalination, maybe I'd be okay at water desalination, but I don't know that I would have made as much of an impact as me following my passion to be an actor and then being able to use that platform to tell great stories and to use my money and resources um, and influence to kind of try and help make the world a better place. It probably ended up better. So thank you, Armand, for your question.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. It really helped me. Yeah, like, just like understanding it.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot, Sahara.
That's awesome. That was a great question and such a thoughtful response. It really makes me think to myself, what does make me come alive? I think we're living, at least I feel like my generation is living in a time where, like you said, there's so many huge challenges that you could be the one to potentially solve or get involved with. And so I know for myself, finding a purpose, so to speak, or finding my calling or what makes me come alive can be really hard, with all of the voices saying you should do this, or you should try this, or this is what really matters, or this is the most important issue to be working on right now. So I think that's a great question for all of us to reflect on, what makes you come alive. And also just it makes me think about what movies I could add to my repertoire of movies that I've seen that really, help me understand the world in a new way as well. So thank you very much for that response. That was really interesting. And I think, what you said there.
If you want to, Sahar, if you really want to understand what it's like being an unemployed rock and roll drummer who finds meaning by joining his nephew's high school rock band and breaking through into fame, then you're going to want to watch my 2008 film, The Rocker.
The Rocker.
Yeah, then you're going to really understand what rock and roll drumming is all about. Okay, deep from right here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's my biggest question. What is rock and roll drumming all about? Wow, thank you all. The Rocker, note it down. That's awesome. And I think when you mentioned acting being a way to bring communities together as well, I think that's something that you've been able to do really well. And I think I'm going to go back to just to SoulPancake as an example. So for those of you who may not know, SoulPancake was a media company and YouTube channel that invited us to chew on life's biggest questions. And I think what was really interesting about SoulPancake was that you explored such a range of topics, right? So anywhere from joy to death to connection, through philosophy and spirituality and creativity. And I feel like through creating that content, you probably learned a lot about the human experience, just as a breath of experience. And I'd love to know maybe what are some of the key things that you learned about what it means to be human by creating SoulPancake and creating content for SoulPancake as well.
Yes, thank you. So SoulPancake was a digital media company, like Sahar said. Mostly that means it was a YouTube channel, but we did very well on our Facebook channel too, creating Facebook content. We worked with a lot of brands. So if, we didn't do ads, we did what was called branded content, which is a little different. So if Purina wanted people to know about the good work it was doing, donating some proceeds to cat rescue, we did this video called Kitten Therapy, where strangers would just go into a playpen and all of a sudden 100 kittens would be released and they would play with the kittens. And it was a joyful video. It got tens of millions of views, hundreds of millions of views, did very well. But it was, and I saw that it was sponsored by Purina, and there was like a mention of like the work that Purina did around its work with cats and stuff like that. But it wasn't an ad for Purina. So we did a lot of that that's kind of what the bread and butter was that kind of kept us profitable. So, it was a incredible journey and an incredible privilege to get to be a part of it. And we made 7,000 videos over 10 years. And we got over 1 billion video views. We became purchased by a larger media company called Participant Media. And one of the great honors of it was to get to do a bunch of videos about mental health, because I know that mental health crisis is in young people is absolutely extraordinary and tragic and overwhelming. We got to make some really interesting video content that I think helped people a lot, about anything from positive psychology, the power of gratitude, the link. We did a documentary on the link between comedy and mental health, and we did work on body dysmorphia, and so many different aspects of the mental health crisis. And it was really powerful for me to just get to learn more about it, and realize that for myself, I struggle a lot with anxiety, and I have a diagnosed anxiety disorder. When I was in my 20s in the 90s, we didn't know that it was called mental health. It was, we were anxious and we were depressed and we were multiply addicted and struggling, but no one called it. We didn't have a label of it of mental health. But I look back on it now and realize that that was really what I was suffering from. So it was great to be able to provide those videos as an aid to people, and I learned a lot from them, and gained a lot from discussing mental health and exploring it. And it's something I love talking about and speaking about, because it really is. And for any of you, this is really this is the next pandemic. This is the next great pandemic. Is the pandemic of young people in mental health. And there's answers, there's hope, there's solutions. There are things that you can do and study and be a part of to help combat this crisis.
Thank you. Yeah, I think what SoulPancake was able to do was to talk about, like I mentioned, the range of human experiences. And I feel like especially things that were hard to talk about. So like you mentioned, mental health. There's also this great series called My Last Days, which was, about people who were terminally ill, and, they were spending their last days, how they would spend their last days here on earth in that experience. And so I feel like it's really special to talk about things that are hard to talk about in such a meaningful and creative way. And I see that as well, like, once again, just talking about the human experience. I see that there's a question in here by Sydney, and I'd love for you to come on and ask your question about, just like how acting related to connecting with humanity. Hey.
Oh, hi, I'm Sydney. This is my husband, Max. So my question was, like, has the notoriety from your acting career, has it helped or hindered you in feeling connected to your humanity?
That's a great question. I've never been asked that before. I would say both. There's times that, fame is a really weird thing. And it was very strange for me because I had been an actor for 14, 15 years before The Office. So I had been doing theater and tours and Broadway and off Broadway and little guest stars on like CSI and Law and Order. And, I was on little shows. I was on Charmed, and, little roles in movies and whatnot. And then all of a sudden I was on a TV show, and it looked like we were going to get canceled and we weren't very popular. And then all of a sudden, 10, 15, 20 episodes in, all of a sudden we became a big hit and we won the Emmy. And then all of a sudden we were all on demand to be in movies and talk shows and stuff. And that was very overwhelming and difficult and strange. And all of a sudden, I'm beating down the doors trying to get work, and and now all of a sudden all this work's coming in to me, and so that can be very disconnecting from, my soul, from my spirit, from my heart, from what, makes me, a human being. And at the same time, I can, it's opened a lot of doors for me. So a lot of doors to my activism and philanthropy and the work that I do, and, going to speak at a TED conference or present at Davos, or it's opened those doors. Frankly, people are interested in me at those events because I am an actor and because I have had the career that I've had. So I'm able to kind of leverage that and make a difference. But I think the important thing is, like, you don't need to be a celebrity to be an activist or to be a philanthropist at all. And I was doing this kind of work before I got well known. It's just important to know that we're all on a journey. One of the journeys that I like to talk about a lot is our spiritual journey. And to me, that doesn't mean a religious journey per se, but we are spiritual beings inhabiting these meat suits for 80 or 90 years, and then when we're done with that, they fall to the side and we continue our journey. And when you look at it from that perspective, then it really shifts your whole perspective on what is important. I see that we have Tuan Nguyen. Can you hear me? Am I saying your name right? Hi, how are you? I was just in Hanoi a few months ago. I see you're from Hanoi. And it was such a beautiful city. I had a great time there. Really beautiful place. So just wanted to say hello.
See, one of the ways you can connect, right? Connecting.
There you go.
to your humanity, and to other people's humanities. Thank you so much for your question, Sydney. I hope that answered it.
Yeah,
thank
you
you
so much for answering it. Yeah.
Thanks, Rainn. I'm a big fan.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, let's pick up on that. You, as you were mentioning, that journey of, trying to have that, your acting career and also the fame, but also the fame not allowing you to really connect maybe to your spirit or to your soul, or maybe posing some challenges to that. So I'm curious to know a little bit more about that spiritual journey for you. What does that look like? Could you tell us a little bit more, and how has it helped you stay grounded or to connect to the bigger picture as you go through your career and life?
Well, I'm a member of the Baha'i faith, and I was raised a Baha'i, and I left the Baha'i faith and religion for a very, very long time, in my 20s and 30s, and then came back to it. And I find that my faith tradition has really helped ground me, and helped give me purpose, and helped me find joy and connection, and kind of put everything into perspective in a really healthy way. So it's helped me a great deal personally, and I'm really grateful for that, because, like I said, part of my spiritual reason for being, part of all of our spiritual reasons for being on the planet is, well, we want to make ourselves better people, right? We have a twofold path, right? We want to make ourselves a better, richer, kinder, more honest person. We want to emulate the divine with those character virtues of, compassion, loving kindness, generosity. And also we want to make the world a better place. So, and that's also part of our spiritual journey. And that's one that's kind of left out a lot. But in every religious tradition, in every spiritual tradition, Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, there is a huge number of teachings about attempting to alleviate suffering in the world, and to have greater compassion and have service to the poor and service to the downtrodden as part of our reason for being alive. So I have found that although religion is not terribly popular these days through much of the world, and for a very good reason, because it has perpetrated so much shame and division and war and conflict, there's a great deal of wisdom in those spiritual traditions that we can draw from.
Thank you for sharing. And I think, you know, well, as a Baha'i myself as well, I think it's really important to understand, you know, our journey in this world, and also just our connection to our soul and how that can help us in this world to create a meaningful life, and to help us, you know, figure out our purpose. And I see that there's a question here. I don't want to mispronounce your name. Stephen, do you want to come up here and ask your question? Stephen, there you are from Colombia. Hi.
So hi, Rainn. First of all, thank you very much for your time being here. My question is, what advice would you give us on living a life with meaning, with purpose, and with substance?
Wow, hard-hitting question. That's great. Well, let's go back to this idea of compassion and movies being empathy machines. I think the most important emotion we can cultivate in ourselves is compassion for others. And one thing I do find in this young generation, you Gen Z, I guess they call you guys, is really this is the most compassionate generation of all time. This is when I speak to young people, and I have a high school age son in high school and in college, feeling compassion literally means to feel with. Calm is with, passion, feel with. And if you have real compassion, that urges you to relieve the suffering of others. It urges you toward action, not just a feeling. Like empathy might be a feeling, you know, pity is a feeling, and it doesn't move beyond that. But compassion allows and necessitates action. So the deeper you work on your compassion toward others, the deeper you will be motivated toward action. The more you're motivated toward action, Stephen, the more that will relieve the symptoms of your mental health issues. I'm not saying you have them, but every young person in the world today has some kind of mental health issues. So it allows you to be happier and more filled with bliss and more filled with peace and serenity if you're in service to others and if you're compassionate for others. So there's a cycle, right? And this helps us grow and learn. So if you want to help yourself grow and find peace and serenity and happiness, focus on others, have compassion for them. That compassion leads to action, and that service will increase your own internal peace and joy and serenity.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Stephen. Great. And just while we're on the topic of, you know, taking action, I see a question, and this is going back to, you know, our conversation about climate change. I see a question by, I hope I'm not mispronouncing your name, Tagati, about COP27 actually. So maybe this could be a great way to just close that loop on that conversation. Awesome. Hey.
Hi. Yeah, I thought because you're a climate change activist and there's this big talk about COP27 and how useful or not useful it is. I'm not going to say my opinion, but how about you think as a climate change activist? Do you think it's a good process, a good infrastructure? Is it going to lead us to the right direction, or is it just going to do nothing much?
Well, that's a great question. It's also a loaded question, because yeah, COP27 was a bust, and it was terrible. And so many of the kind of more technologically advanced countries have not been meeting their goals, and they're trying to skirt around that. And a lot of the oil producing countries are trying to find more and more loopholes to allow greater emissions and more oil exploration. So it's been a real bust. But I think the mistake is to pull the plug on the COPs. For those who don't know, the COPs are a yearly conference where the countries meet together and consult and set goals to try and reach to half our emissions by 2030, and then by 2050 have zero new emissions. But the conversations need to happen, because for climate, there's only so much individuals can do. 80%, 90% of climate issues have to do with oil companies and coal companies, manufacturing companies, building companies, real estate, air conditioning, transportation companies. Like those companies, there really is, like, I forget what the study was, but there was like 100 companies that are responsible for 60, 70% of climate change. They can only be kind of curtailed or restrained through government legislation. So we need to still have these meetings. We still need to have meetings at Davos with the billionaires and the heads of state. Like, those kind of high level interactions need to be happening. We need to put pressure on our leaders and our representatives, and however we can, to put pressure on our banking institutions to not lend money for oil exploration, etc., and the energy companies that are the biggest culprits. But and obviously at an individual level, there's much we can do to reduce our own carbon footprint and our own reliance on petroleum and energy. But it's important that all of these things happen, that we have activism, we have individual initiative, that everyone, whatever country you're in, looks like you're in from Senegal, but you're in Canada, and Canada is terrible. Canada, in a lot of ways, is worse than the United States, because it talks like it's very green. It's very like, oh, we're so green and environmental. Meanwhile, they're just dredging up the coal sands, the tar sands, and exporting all of this energy, oil and coal and whatnot, and natural gas. And whereas America doesn't even pretend. We're just kind of like, we're, so there's just a lot of work to be done. And I see you're also from Senegal. And as we all know here, and it warrants saying time and time again, that the people that will suffer the most are from the developing countries. So as the first world nations, for lack of a better phrase, forgive me for using first world nations, but the more technologically advanced countries, throw up shopping malls and burn coal and have air conditioning in every room, and fly around the world willy-nilly in first class. The consequences are getting played out in the developing countries. That's devastating, absolutely devastating. And again, why we need to increase our compassion. So thank you for your question.
Thank you. That was very good. Thank you.
Did I get it right?
Yeah, all wrong. No, I'm joking.
Thank you. And Tagasi, just to remind me, are you from Senegal, or did you do the Senegal program? Because we also have a Senegal program. Both. Okay. Oh, awesome. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I think that speaking of, just all the work that needs to be done around climate change, and I feel like, as an activist, you probably have, participated in different, ways of revolution, right? And I know you have an upcoming book called Soul Boom: Why We Need a Spiritual Revolution. So I'm curious to know a little bit about, what planted the seed for you to write this book. What can people expect to learn from the book? If you're open to talking about it, just
Sure.
looks like for you, that revolution.
I'm almost done, Sahar. I'm almost done. In fact, I should be writing right now. I took time off. I have to have it all handed in by Sunday night.
I believe in you.
I have another like 5 pages to write to finish it, and I have to comb through what I've written, but I'm almost there. I'm on the finish line. Yes, I worked really hard on this book over COVID. It's been taking me 3 years, and it's called Soul Boom: Why We Need a Spiritual Revolution. And a lot of the stuff I've been talking to you guys about today, all of it, climate change, compassion, spiritual journeys, activism. I also put in chapters on God and on death and some big topics on the myriad of global pandemics that are out there, on religion. And to me, there's only so much that can be done politically and through legislation, because our whole world society, for most of the world, not all of it, but most of the world society, is built on faulty systems, what I would call adversarial systems. So everything is set up to be adversarial, to be competitive, to have contest, one-upsmanship. This is capitalism, but it's even deeper than capitalism, because it's how we see the human race. We see us as competitive fighters, to the victor goes the spoils. It's a dog eat dog world, and we're in this kind of jockeying on an individual level, on a societal level, on a cultural level, and on a world level of it's nationalism and patriotism and greed. And as long as those engines are running, it doesn't matter what laws we pass. It doesn't matter what things we decide in the United Nations. It doesn't matter what agreement. We can make all the agreements we want at COP27 or any of these climate conferences, and we can even reduce CO2. But as long as we view planet Earth as like an ATM, as like a bank machine that we can just draw unlimited resources out of and suck it out of our planet and then spew it into our atmosphere and just kind of use the planet for our own profit, our own comfort, our own gain, things aren't really going to change. So what does that necessitate? That necessitates a huge shift in how we think about who we are as human beings and why we're here, and to shift ourselves from competition to cooperation, and to write a new story for humanity that's filled with joy and eliminates cynicism and brings people together and creates unity. And this sounds like hippy dippy, airy fairy, BS. But if you really want to be an activist, it's about creating community at the grassroots and starting in your locality and spreading outwards. And that's a spiritual revolution, and that's the spiritual revolution that I'm talking about. I think the word spiritual is tricky for a lot of people, because to some people it means like hippy dippy yoga classes and crystals, and incense. To some people, it means spiritual just means church or synagogue or mosque, or temple. And it's larger than that. But if we understand that we're spiritual beings in service to one another, if we're interconnected with one another, then that's where the revolution lies.
Wow. Sounds like a book I'd like to read. That's awesome. Thank you. And I definitely think community being at the center of it all is something that I feel like I'm learning every day. I study community development. That's kind of my thing. And I feel like the power lies within building community, but I feel like we've forgotten somewhere along the way, how to really create community through cooperation and through, all the values that you just mentioned. So I think it's going to be a really interesting book, and also just paradigm shift for maybe people who have been raised in most of us been raised by capitalism, right? Like raised by those systems. So thank you so much. And we only have 4 minutes here, so I was thinking rapid fire questions to end it off. What do you think, Rainfall? All right, let's go. So I'm going to go through the 3 H's, and then I'm going to ask you one final question. So the first H, what breaks your heart?
People being mean to each other.
Yeah, same. Okay, who are your heroes? Second H.
Greta Thunberg is a hero of mine. And Oprah Winfrey.
Mhm.
Those are 2 of my heroes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good heroes to have.
Roger Federer.
I don't know that person.
He's the tennis
Oh, got
greatest
it.
tennis player ever. Yeah.
Sorry to the tennis fans. I know now. Okay, and last one. What's your biggest hope?
My biggest hope is that I get to meet Jazzy Jokes, because that's the greatest name I've ever heard in my life. And I hope one day I get to high five Jazzy Jokes. No, my hope is that we start to. So one of the things I talk about in my book is, and I know we have to wrap up here, is we live in a culture of protest. And I think for a lot of young people, they've kind of been lured into this idea that, oh, here's an injustice that I see, and I'm going to protest it. I'm going to shout on Twitter, and I'm going to go to a march, and I'm going to shout and protest it. It's like, that's great, and that's important. But what do you do after that? Because that's not enough. Because right now there's a lot of protest, and then it stops, and we wait for the next injustice, which could be a couple days, couple weeks. There it is again. Outrage over the injustice. We have to build something. It's much harder to build something than it is to protest something. And then we need to make the people that are building those things, we need to make them our heroes. Because right now there's a lot of people building a lot of incredible things, and nobody knows who they are. So those should be our heroes, not social media stars.
Interesting. Yeah. Thank you. And in our final minute, if you could give one piece of advice to your 18-year-old self, what would it be?
Just don't waste so much time on selfish pursuits. It's just a time waster, and it can really suck you in and lure you in. And nowadays, and I didn't even have at the time, I didn't have social media, I didn't have video games, I didn't have like dating apps, didn't have like unlimited pornography on every telephone. Like the temptations for young people is so hard on those phones, because the phone is just a portal to just endless diversion, and that would have been really hard for me as a teenager and in my 20s to deal with the endless diversion that's on a phone. It's like, oh, I got 47 games, I've got 7 different social media apps, I've got unlimited porn, I've got unlimited like dating apps and everything else in between, text chains, and I could just spend all day on this thing. And I still struggle with that in my 50s. So it must be very hard. And so my heart goes out to you guys around that. It's a very difficult challenge.
So more selflessness if we can. I appreciate that.
And less phones.
And less phones. Yes. Also great advice. Thank you so much, Rainn. If you're interested, thank you as well to our audience. This has been really great. I've loved seeing your faces. And just know that if you wanted to share any gratitude with Rainn, you could do so through the survey link in the chat. And it just so grateful to everybody for being here from near and far. And I hope that, you took something away from this conversation. And Rainn, good luck on your 5 pages. I believe in you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's such a pleasure. I love seeing all your faces from all around the world. It's so beautiful. And this is really gorgeous what you guys are doing. Thank you to Global Citizen Year and all of your amazing work and bringing this incredible coalition of game changers, of world changers together and world servants together. And it's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Rainn. Have a great weekend, everybody. Until next time.